duplicating.
Yes,
So this
yes.
is actually exact logical error in a file inclusion, but it is a sensitive vulnerability. So I'll tell you how you can take a remote code execution also using file inclusion in next session. Okay, so now we can go for the remote file inclusion. Okay, so remote file inclusion also the same. Okay, see, in local file inclusion, attacker exposing the local internal sensitive files in a web page. For example, this is a server, means attacker exposing instead of this genuine file, attacker trick the application to disclose the other internal files. Okay, and they're making information disclosing of other files in the web page. Okay, attacker tricky calling the local files. This is local file inclusion. In remote file inclusion, attacker tricking the application to load the data of other server. Okay, for example, this is the server having a vulnerability of file inclusion. Attacker may also use this vulnerability to execute to display the information from the other server also. So we can perform it practically, then you'll get clear understand over that. Okay, so for this example, I'm taking this demo testry.net, and while we performing IDOR, we can perform it on a live application. Okay, so not this application, we can take this test PHP application as for an example. So the very first thing what we should have to do, we have to analyze where the file is getting input. Okay, so wherever they are calling file as an input in the application. So I'm just closing this Apache server right now. Okay, so there are two possibilities if you want to find the internal directories or files what they are using in application. One thing, you can do it on a manually. So in manually, you can check what are the internal files like folders they are using. Okay, what all the directories and files they are using. Or if you're having a worksheet, you can do this one. Okay, go to the application and first you make intercept over this request. Yes, okay, I'm making a refresh. Yes, now burp intercept the request and I'm forwarding this request at all. Okay, now what I'm doing is I'm going to the target and I'm adding this testphp.onemer.net in my scope. Okay, now what I'm doing is, see, I'm just clicking a multiple buttons and pages of this site, so which will produce a multiple request. So that time there is a chance Burp will find some internal parameters, and even if they are calling any file as an input, that also will be possible to see here. Okay, see here the internal files here, there are the it finds the URIs of the server. Okay, see here we can able to find there is a file. Okay, see guys, and one more important thing, the file needs to call in the parameter. So for example, here there is a only slash means slash logo, means it they're just only directly calling the logo file. So here we can't able to perform that. Wherever the application processing file from the u parameter, because parameter only executes. See, for example, I'm just taking this URL. Okay, so for example, if I instead of this file I'm giving any sensitive file, means that will be not including here. Okay, they are generally calling this file, so we can't perform file inclusion in this part. Okay, even if the file is disclosing any information, that is a really poor configuration at all. Okay, so these are all just information passing. So wherever in the URL they calling any file, then you can check for the file inclusion vulnerability. So far I'm just going with the posters and I'm checking with this one. Okay, so this image, see now what happened, this image also file. Okay, file means most people will think like either it may be a text file or something. Okay, image also will be considered. Okay, though, so this image also a file. See, now they are calling the image file equal to the same file equal to parameter only. So show image.php file equal to parameter. So here they are calling the internal files. So here what you can do is, if you know any internal sensitive file, you can give the internal sensitive files from here also. That is one possibilities. Or here you can perform the remote file inclusion attack. So I'll tell you what is the advantage of remote file inclusion. Means, see, for example, here this is a site. Okay, and I am a hacker. I'm hosting any malicious site, and my malicious site will be exactly I'm cloning like a new site. Okay, so for example, this is domain A. Okay, I'm an attacker. I am having a malicious domain, and I'm making my domain is exactly like a website A. I'm just cloning a website A, and I'm cloning and I host it on my server. So for example, if I put any content in the server, but this using this server, I am calling to access my URL. That is a remote file encryption. So don't confuse. I'll perform it in practically now. Or just for example, here I'm hosting my file itself. See, so before that, I need an ngrok because if I host something in my server, see, I'm just deleting the file. Okay, so I'm creating another file called remote underscore file dot txt. Okay, so inside this remote underscore file dot txt file, I'm just putting some contents like this is the file present in our in attacker server. Okay, so this is the content we post in this remote.txt file. So I'm just hosting my Apache server, but I need to make a port forwarding because we only have the private IP address. So if you want to load this content in this page, then we should have to make a port forward because this testphp.worldmap.com is the application which is hosted publicly. If I call my server location like 192.168.0. Something means it will never work because that is my private IP. So for a port forwarding, I'm downloading ngrok. So once after perform this, you'll get a clear idea about how it's working. So just wait. Meanwhile, in this time, I'm copying my auth token of ngrok from this machine. Yes, no. So now it is downloaded. So just wait. I need to close this machine because just wait. I'll tell you why. Because both these two machines having the same similar IP address. So I'm just closing this machine. Then only I can able to take internet access from the next machine. Now you have a doubt why not you can create an account on this machine to get auth token means yes of course. So but for now I'm just taking this from another machine. Okay, so yes, I got auth token from another machine. I'm just going to this machine once again. Okay, so next what I'm doing is I'm just starting my ngrok service. Before that I'm start running my python server. Okay, so I'm using the command python 2 simple HTTP server in port number 7878. So you can run this service in any port as per you want. Okay, so for example, I'm running it on port number 7878, and this is a general HTTP service only. So I'm giving the command ngrok HTTP, and I'm making this port number 7878 into port forwarding. Yes, so now it is working, but the real surprising thing is it is working in HTTPS because this demo.testfile.net, this testphp.net application will never accept the HTTPS application request. This testphp.site internal error actually. This is okay. So else we can check some other applications for any informations. Now only I got this one. Mm, you can see somewhere if there is any HTTP applications available in the website or not. So we can check whether they're having any HTTP applications running means. So we can take this also for example. So this is actually login page, but I am going to the application to find is there any file they are calling. Okay, so this is the information in available in remote file. So what I am doing is I'm just going to this application and I'm checking parameter where they are calling any file as a input. Okay, so yes, so here they are calling a file as an input. So now what I'm doing is instead of this file location, you can give an internal sensitive file name. Okay, if you know any internal sensitive file name means you can give, if the file is available in the server means it will disclose the information of the file. Okay, but you need to use a verb shoot for this particular image based scenario. Why means, because if it is image means it only displays image, disclose image in a web page, but in a verb shoot you can able to see the contents in the repeater. Okay, so that is how verb shoot will be helpful for in image parameter only. Okay, so first I'm going with this proxy and I'm making intercept on. Okay, so yes, so now we got the request. So what I'm doing is I'm generally sharing this request to the repeater. Okay, so in this repeater, first I'm sending the request, see the response. Now the response is look like scramble, which means the image response in a verb shoot will be show like this scramble only. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm just removing this internal file. Okay, now when if the user will click the button, okay, so when if the user will click the image file, they are calling this file from the parameter. Okay, this is the exact thing we had discussed in the file inclusion also. Wherever the application URL call any content from the file. Okay, so there's a chance for file inclusion. So here they are including the file by the use of PHP include statements. So this is actually they are using in a backend. Now what we are doing, so I'm just removing the internal normal file and I'm giving the remote file location. Okay, so this career.php will available in the all-timer cargo website. Okay, and I'm making sending. See, now it's showing. Yeah, so these are the information available in which site? ETC India Express Delivery, Courier and Shipping. So these are the informations available in the, yes, ETC India Express Delivery, courier information. So these are the informations available in the remote server. So this is generally remote file inclusion. So if it is a proper application means what it needs to do, it have to properly validate the user input, whether they are calling any internal sensitive file or they are calling any files from the remote server. Okay, so why means I'll tell you. I'm just copying this URL. Okay, so this is the general URL. So whenever we click the picture, I'm making sub off. Okay, so whenever we are clicking the picture, this is the URL. So in this URL what they are doing, okay, they are calling contents from this file. Okay, whenever we click the page or image, they are calling content from the file. Now as an attacker what we perform, okay, just I'm closing this one also. Okay, so instead of this original file I'm just copying the another file. Okay, remote file, another file presented in another server. Okay, see, now we remove this internal file and we are giving the location of another remote file. So this careers.php file is located in the all-timer cargo website. Okay, so this is the file located in all-timer cargo website. If it is a proper application means what it should have to do, it should have to validate only the informations. Okay, only this test PHP information. So if it is not validating means that, see, other files, okay, other server information is also disclosing here. So in repeater you can able to see in response these are the contents in the remote all-timer cargo site. Okay, so this is actually remote coding, sorry, remote file inclusion. I'll tell you the seriousness of remote file inclusion because most people will think like, okay, generally calling the third party website file only now. So what is vulnerable in this means? I'll tell you. Okay, so I'm just down go to the downloads folder. I'm starting this XAMPP server again. I'll show you now. Because see what happening here, instead of image what we provide the page of the another server. See, for example, if this is a attacker server, just consider this is attacker server, and I am hosting any malicious file or malicious or file containing many malicious statements or functions like stealing victim cookies or making alert. Okay, so using this RFI, you can able to make a accesses also in test PHP site. Okay, so this test PHP site is actually vulnerable to remote file inclusion. So attacker can able to perform accesses via remote file inclusion. So if I perform accesses via remote file inclusion means that will be executing in the test PHP site only. Okay, so I'll show you in practically that time you'll get clear understanding on it. So why I'm telling you is most people will in POC also, if you are doing a penetration testing in a real time or even in a bug bounty, some people will take a POC of a very even in the POC they are finding a severe vulnerability, but the POC look like just a normal one. Okay, see, for example, if you find cross-scripting vulnerability means you have to alert the cookies, then only the administrators or the website or application owners will know about the series. So for example, if you just alerting one in a cross-scripting means they don't know. Okay, they what they think, okay, so this alerting one, so why we have to give acknowledgement, why we have to give reward to this part. So this is how the administrator will think. So if you find any vulnerability, you can make it as a chain link of vulnerability. Okay, you can try to perform chain link of attack, then that severity will be critical. Okay, so for example, using one vulnerability, if you can able to execute another vulnerability, then the severity and importance of the vulnerability will getting some high. So if you are doing any private bug bounty program, and if you are doing a chain link of vulnerability means you get some more rewards than usual. Okay, yeah, so now it is running. Okay, so just I'm going with this XVWA. Okay, so this is the site, and yes, here it is vulnerable to the file inclusion vulnerability. So whenever I'm clicking this file, what happening? It calling the secret.txt file in a backend. Okay, now you just consider this application is not vulnerable to the XSS attack. Okay, now you just consider this application is not vulnerable to XSS attack. Either they having other stages, but generally you just consider it is a normal application, doesn't have XSS attack. Now I'm showing you one thing. Script. See, now what I am doing is I am running a two servers. Okay, one server you just take a reference for the filing for XVWA, and I'm parallelly hosting another Python server, and I am doing a one more thing. So I'm just creating a malicious file here. Okay, so like file.html. It is not so malicious. Just for example, I am putting some content into the file. Generally, in cross-site scripting, if you give the functions like alert document.domain means what happened? Alert one and script close. See, now what happened if we exploit, we give this payload in a normal website. So for example, I'm going with this demo.sy.net, and here I'm giving the payload and it is alerting one. So instead of one, if you give a document.domain means what happened? It alerts the domain name. Okay, so document.domain. See, now I'm copying this payload and giving on here. See, now it is alerting the domain name demo.sy.net. Okay, the same thing what I am going to do giving in my script also. See now what I'm giving in the script, I'm in the body, I'm just making alert document.domain. Okay, so first I'm running this into my Python server. Okay, see. Okay, so okay, so now this Python server is running on my desktop location in port number 5656. Okay, so 127.0.0.1 5656. Okay, so this file.html is file. See, whenever we click this file.html file means what happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so displaying the domain name. Okay, so because in JavaScript payload, what we mentioned, alert document.domain. So what is the domain name? It is learning on a loopback. So it's showing 127.0.0.1 is the domain name. Now I'm copying this file location. Okay, see, I'm just clicking this file. Okay, so whenever I'm clicking this URL, this content will be loaded from the file secret.txt, and you just consider this XVWA is not vulnerable to XSS. Okay, so this XVWA is not vulnerable to XSS, and now here I'm calling the file in my server. Okay, now instead of local file, I am calling file from the remote server. So this is actually remote server, and let me make execute. Okay, so now this will be okay. So for example, if I'm okay, so else I'm just calling another file in this location. See, test123. I'm putting the content as a test123 here, and I'm calling this file.txt file in this location. Okay, so before that, see, okay, yeah, so this is file.txt file. I'm just copying this URL and paste it on here. Okay, so this application actually, this is a vulnerability in this application especially, so that is why it is not disclosing. But generally, if it is a file upload inclusion vulnerability, means see what happened in real time. Okay, this is actually issuing this XVWA. But I'll tell you, if you find a file inclusion vulnerability in a live application, how you can perform that. So now Bob has intercept the request, and I'm sending the request to my repeater. So in this repeater, first I am making sending this request, and yes, this is the response. Okay, so for this request, this is the response we get. Now what we'll do is, so instead of this secret.txt file, I'm giving the file of a remote server. Okay, so this is the information we are going to give. Okay, so this is the file is present in the remote server. Okay, so this is not actually including, because this there is an issue in this XVWA. This is not issue in a random server, so this is actually vulnerability in this XVWA. So just wait, we'll perform the same in another server. Okay, so just wait, we'll perform the same. I'm opening this B box now. So once after this, we take some break and we continue. We'll see about next vulnerabilities. Okay, so so I'm checking IP address of this B box. It is running on 192.168.0.108. Okay, so I'm going to my server. So I'm going to the Kali machine. See, now we can exploit more than two vulnerabilities at all. Just making intercept of, so 192.168.0.108. So this is the server of bbox application and bwap. So yesterday we had created a user, so even I forgot the user. Can anybody please remind me? Oh, so yesterday we had created a user Adam now. So I'm just going with the login and I'm logging as an Adam user. Yes. So now we had login as an Adam user. Just give me a minute. Yes, guys, I'm back. Okay. So yes, here I'm choosing a file inclusion vulnerability. Okay. So there is a many vulnerabilities are in this B box. You can exploit all the vulnerability. You'll get more idea about uh, in a web application exploitations. Okay. So I'll try to cover most important vulnerabilities in our session also. So where is file inclusion? I'm checking from again. So HTML injection, SQL injection, session management, XSS, radar. Okay. See, now it asking to select the language. So this is the general option in this application. Okay. Now what I am doing is I am just giving go. So whenever I'm pressing go, see what happened in this URL parameters. See, I'm just copying the parameter and I'm showing you here. Okay, so this is the URL. In this URL, they are calling, there is a two parameter is passing. One is language equal to, another one is action equal to. Okay, so there are two parameters passing. One is action equal to, another one is a language equal to. In which parameter they are calling a file is language equal to. Okay, see in this language equal to parameter, they are calling the file as a lang underscore en dot php. So this is the file they are calling. So for example, I'm just choosing another language like a Netherlands. Okay, so now they are calling a different different files. Okay, so this is generally this application is working. Okay, see what I'm doing is I'm just removing this internal file. Okay, so this is how they are working. Now what I'm doing is I'm just removing this internal file. Instead of that, I'm giving a file in my server. Okay, okay, so I'm just going to this file.txt file and I'm copying this URL. Okay, and now I'm coming back to this position. Okay, now I'm coming back to this position. So I'm removing this genuine file. Okay, so this is the actual file they are calling and including. Now instead of this, I'm giving the file which is in the remote server, this file.txt file. See what happened. See, whenever we are calling the file, what happened? This is the content and information inside the file.txt file. Okay, in remote server, for example, this file.txt is located on the attacker server. See guys, this is actually attacker server and this file.txt file is located on the attacker server. Now it's showing the attacker server file information in this location, in this bwap. So consider this is this bwap is a public application which is vulnerable to local file inclusion. Okay, so understand the scenario. This bwap is a public info application which is vulnerable to local file inclusion. So we found this language equal to parameter is vulnerable to file inclusion. So what we are doing is we are calling the file from the attacker server or any third-party server. Okay, we are calling file from any third-party server. It processes the request and it loads the information of the third-party server file. Okay, see here what I am doing is instead of this file, I'm just going with file.html. So whenever we are going to file.html means what happening? It alerting document.domain. Okay, now I am copying this one. Okay, and I am paste it on here. Okay, so this file.html and let me process it. See this 1088 is address belongs to which machine. See first I'm going to this attacker server and I'm clicking the file.html file. So whenever I'm clicking this file.html file, it alerting the domain name. So domain name is 192.168.0.116. So this 0.116 is our Kali Linux. Okay, but here it alerting which domain name. Understood? This 108 IP address is belongs to bwap. This is alerting the bwap domain name. See, now it look like XSS. Okay, so it look like we found XSS in a bwap, but consider the scenario. This bwap application is not vulnerable to XSS, but what we did, we use file inclusion vulnerability. So using the file inclusion vulnerability, we perform XSS into the bwap. Okay, it alerting the BWAP information only. So for example, now I'm editing the code like C. Just for example, I'm going to the file.html file and I'm just giving like document.cookie. Okay, see now this file.html. Okay, so this BWAP is a public application which is not vulnerable to XSS. Okay, so you just consider the scenario. This BWAP is application which is not vulnerable to XSS. Then it is possible for a cookie hijacking. If it is vulnerable for XSS, then we can perform a HTML injection and cookie hijacking through XSS. But this BWAP application is not vulnerable to XSS. So instead of that, it vulnerables to file inclusion vulnerability. Okay, it vulnerables to local file and remote file inclusion vulnerability. So as attacker, what we perform, so we create a vulnerable server in our point of view. Okay, in our system. So we created a vulnerable server in our system and host it on this Python server. Okay, we created a vulnerable script in our system and we host it on our Python server. And whenever the script is running, it calling the document.cookies function of JavaScript. Now what we are doing is we are calling the same file from BWAP. Okay, now we are calling this is actually presented in our file in our server only. This 116 is attacker server. So we are calling this file.html file from BWAP. Okay, we are calling this file from BWAP. So who making processing over this file? Who making processing over file? This BWAP only making processing over file. So that is why in that file, what we generally mention, we mention document.domain. So BWAP only processing the file. So that is why it's showing BWAP IP address as the host name. Okay. See now what I'm doing is I'm just calling the file again. Either the script may be available in attacker server, but now who performing the script, who executing the script? BWAP only executing the script. So it's showing session ID of BWAP. Okay, so this is actually three combination attack. So XSS via SSRF using RFI. Okay, so we exploit SSRF and the method we perform is we perform XSS. Okay, so this XSS attack via SSRF because here this application sending a request to the third party domain. Okay, XSS via SSRF through RFI attack. So this is a three chain combination of attack. Okay, so in bug bounty program, if you do like this means it will be more powerful. Okay, the chain combination of attack. So if even if you find any vulnerability, you can try to take over the chain combination, so that will be having a good impact. Okay, as a tester you get more uh, reputation at all. Okay, local file inclusion, because in local file we get internal sensitive file, but if you are searching for an internal sensitive file but there is a no file available means, then you can go for a remote file inclusion. Using remote file inclusion you can execute third party script in the website also. Okay, so if you create a website, if you create any malicious code and host it on your server, and if you use this remote file inclusion to calling the file means, this BWAP application will call the file. Okay, so for example, if you are testing any application means, that vulnerable application only process the file, that time that file will be executed on the vulnerable application only. So that is why it's showing vulnerable application domain name. So for your reference only I make that one. Okay, so this is actually file
Yeah.
inclusion attacks.